Today I am going to talk about chapter 7 in the book, The Jewel Ornament of Liberation, with commentary by Khenchen Prangu Rinpoche. And this chapter is on refuge and the precepts. And I did not complete the 7th chapter last week. And so I'm going to start there. And one reason is that the last part of that chapter, it kind of summarizes what has gone before and is an introduction to this 8th chapter here on taking refuge and the importance of it. And really, it goes beyond this chapter to chapters further on in the book. So we need to develop an attitude towards bodhicitta, that this is the remedy for the defect of not knowing the method to practice to accomplish Buddhahood. So this is about eliminating obstacles, unfavorable conditions to not knowing the path. And the definition of bodhicitta that is used here is, quote, the pure motivation to accomplish Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. That's fairly concise. But that is what bodhicitta is. The words in Sanskrit translated, bodhi means awake and chitta means mind. So it's awake mind. This pure motivation to accomplish Buddhahood so that all beings can be benefited by ours. It's not to achieve Buddhahood for our own benefit, just to alleviate and eliminate our suffering, but it is to eliminate the suffering of all sentient beings. So the obstacles that he has already discussed are clinging to pleasures in this life, thinking that samsara has happy places in it that we can reside in this life or future lives. And then clinging to a selfish state of peace. So the remedy for these three errors have already been discussed, and that is the contemplation on impermanence, karma as cause and effect, and meditation on it or contemplation on it. And then the contemplation on the defects of samsara, that no matter where you are, if you're not suffering now, there will be future suffering that arises for you, and it is unavoidable. And also on top of that, this chapter 7 was meditating on loving kindness and compassion. And that kind of helps remedy these three obstacles. Now, no matter where we are on the path, motivation is most important from the beginning to the end. And we're going to go into that in more detail tonight. He ends this chapter by talking about the foundation for developing an attitude towards bodhicitta. And it is, first of all, that we possess the Mahayana potential. Second, it is taking refuge. Third, it is the Pratimoska vows or precepts, taking one or more of them. And then finally, the aspiration for to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, this bodhicitta aspiration. So about the having the Mahayana potential, he says that it is in two forms. One is a potential that it is not awakened, that all sentient beings have Buddha nature, that it is innate, and in a way, nothing needs to be added. But it is not awakened. It's, you might say, potential, nothing more than potential. So the other aspect of this potential is awakened potential. And in order to accomplish that, and this is, of course, what we our desire, is we need to turn our minds towards enlightenment. It does not happen accidentally, that we need to do this. On the other hand, he says, all you have to do is have this thought, quote, I want to achieve Buddhahood. And this is the wish that we take with us when we enter the Mahayana path. So now getting into chapter 8, which is on refuge and the precepts. We take refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And the foundation of this is this Mahayana motivation, so that we're doing this to benefit all beings and to have this mentality of wanting enlightenment. So we need to have that awakened potential of the Mahayana, as is mentioned above. To take refuge, we still need protection of refuge from the very beginning of the path to complete enlightenment. So we need to have pure motivation. We have to practice. We cannot attain enlightenment without practicing. It does not happen by itself. No matter how much other people help us, if we don't do the work, it will not happen. Trungpa Rinpoche says that if you have pure motivation and diligence and devotion and so forth, that no one can stop you from reaching your goal. And on the other hand, if you don't have those, even if all sentient beings are assisting you to attain the goal, it will not happen. So he then, in talking about refuge, classifies two types. One is cause refuge, which is temporary. This is, we have work to do. That the Buddha is the one that showed us the path. The Dharma is the path, and the Sangha are our friends and our companions that help us along the path. The result refuge is permanent, as opposed to the first one being temporary. And this is when we become a fully enlightened Buddha, which is irreversible. So the result refuge is becoming the ultimate. So he then goes on to talk about the classification of refuge. He does a lot of distinctions here in this chapter. So there is common refuge, which is taking refuge in the three jewels for one's own benefit. And special refuge is taking refuge in the three jewels for the benefit of all sentient beings. And Rinpoche stress this, that when you're taking refuge, to have this Mahayana outlook, that you are taking refuge for the benefit of all beings. The working basis is the next point, and with common refuge, you take refuge because of fear of further suffering, and you want protection from the suffering. The special refuge is having the Mahayana potential, that you're taking refuge because you want to bring all sentient beings to enlightenment. The next point is the object of refuge. So the common objects of refuge is the first point. The second point is the special objects of refuge. So in the category of common objects of refuge, the Buddha represents the best realization. The Dharma are the words of the Buddha and the scriptures, and the realization of the teachings. The Sangha consists of both ordinary beings and realized beings. Now, the other category, the special objects of refuge, he has this divided up into three groups here. The first is the close objects of refuge, and these are images of the Buddha, the Mahayana scriptures, and the community of bodhisattvas. And here we look at the Buddha as one who can inspire us, who can help us develop intense faith and devotion and the aspiration to practice, and to help us develop a very deep appreciation of the qualities of a Buddha. And from that, then profound respect. And then from that grows diligence, joyful exertion, diligence in our practice. Along with this then goes with respect and special treatment for Dharma objects, whether it be practice material, statues, paintings, and so forth, that they represent the body of the Buddha. And so we are to give them special respect and treatment. The Sangha here refers to ordinary beings, includes friends, friends on the quote, extraordinary path to enlightenment. So then objects of direct realization is the next category here in this heading of special objects of refuge. So these are the Buddha representing the three kayas, the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. The Dharmakaya is formless, and only a Buddha can experience his Dharmakaya. Other beings cannot. So then the Buddha manifests form bodies or kayas, and the Sambhogakaya is made out of light entirely. It's not made out of physical matter. And it can appear in any of the deities that we practice. This is the Sambhogakaya. And then the Nirmanakaya is the actual physical body of the Buddha. And so when you see a painting or a statue of the Buddha, this is a Nirmanakaya manifestation. So that is for the Buddha. The Dharma represents direct realization of the nature of mind, which is beyond suffering. And the Sangha represents the direct realization of bodhisattvas, highly realized beings. The third category is the ultimate object of refuge, and that is that one becomes a Buddha. And when you are a Buddha, then you cannot fall back, and therefore you do not need the Dharma and the Sangha for support or for refuge. On page 122, he mentions these three categories, and he mentions this third one, the ultimate object of refuge, as suchness, which is very similar to emptiness. But he doesn't really go in to explain that much. So I'm just bringing that up and saying that obviously when you become a fully enlightened Buddha, you have totally realized emptiness, interdependence, suchness, or any other word that you would want to call it. And this is beyond concepts, beyond categories, and so forth, and it is totally beyond suffering. Now, the next point that is gone into in this chapter is the time or the duration of refuge. So with common refuge, it is for one lifetime. When you die, the vow ends, and you go on to your next life, wherever that will be. With special refuge, the vow goes with you until you are fully enlightened. Then is the motivation. And he's touched on this already. And with a common refuge, it's protect yourself from suffering. With special refuge, it is to protect others from suffering. Then he talks about the ceremony. That most important, it is the motivation that you take with you during the ceremony and carry with you after the ceremony. The ceremony, in a way, is just a beginning. Khenpo Rinpoche would use the term, it's a gateway to the path, that before you take refuge, you are, you might say, looking over the fence at the path, but you're not on the path. And with refuge, you open the gate and enter the path. So it is important to have the proper meditation motivation, and to have it come from deep within and done sincerely and purely. And again, the motivation has just been covered, and that is with the common, it is to protect yourself from suffering, and with special, it's to protect others from suffering. But this motivation is extremely important. Now, the function is the next point here. There are 9 points that he makes, and so this is point number 7. In the short term, the function is it offers us protection from being reborn in the 3 lower realms, the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm. In the long term, ultimately, it is the protection from all suffering of samsara, all suffering of conditioned existence. It is complete Buddhahood. Then point number 8 is training and practice that follows the ceremony. And so these are frequently discussed after the completion of a refuge ceremony, but the preceptor will bring these up. So there are 3 general trainings, 3 specific trainings, and 3 common trainings. So the 3 general trainings are to, first of all, make offerings to the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. He mentions offerings that we are ready to part with. It doesn't have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to be giving things that we have a lot of difficulty parting with. And another of Trungpa Rinpoche's books, he talks about a monk, an old monk, that came to him one day and said, I'm really want to practice renunciation, and can I give you all these belongings of mine that I would like to renounce? And he brought them to Trungpa Rinpoche, and it was quite a large amount of personal property, and Trungpa Rinpoche told his attendant to do not, you might say, distribute these or give these to somebody else or use them, just keep them. And soon the old monk came and said, well, you know, there was one thing that I have discovered that I really need. I wish I hadn't given it to you. Can I have it back? And by the time Trungpa Rinpoche finishes the story, basically the monk could come back and wanted everything that he had given Trungpa Rinpoche, that he felt he really couldn't live without it. So we want to avoid having regret when we are making offerings. And the offerings are an expression of appreciation, an expression of our confidence in the 3 jewels. And it's good to have a feeling of enthusiastic giving and joyful giving. And it is a wrong view to think that, well, if I make this offering, then they will be kind to me or do me a favor, or to think that if I don't make an offering, then they'll be mad at me, or there'll be consequences of some kind or another. Or to think that, well, they need these offerings because they can't take care of themselves, for instance. Trungpa Rinpoche uses the word destitute. So avoid those attitudes. The second of the general trainings after refuge is to never give up on the 3 jewels, that hold them in a high place with respect and look at them as a source of refuge, and don't put them aside. And the third point is always keep the 3 jewels in mind, which is very closely related to never giving up. If you keep them in mind always, then it's less likely that you will give up. But don't give up on your practice and study and so forth. So those are the 3 general trainings. The 3 specific trainings are don't go for refuge to worldly gods. And Krangu Rinpoche mentions that this might sound like you're being sectarian, that you're, well, my religion is better than your religion, my spiritual path is better than your spiritual path. But that's not what the meaning is here. That if you go to a worldly God for refuge, it shows that you don't have confidence in the three jewels who have given you refuge. And so that dilutes, if not negates, your commitment to the three jewels. And if you start following then that other path, then you are not on the Buddhist path. Rinpoche would say when he gave refuge that if you come from another spiritual tradition, it doesn't mean that you have to give up that other tradition, but that you have to put the Buddhist path on top, that is the most important tradition. So that's the meaning of this, don't go for refuge to worldly gods. Also, when Rinpoche would explain this one, he would say, especially those that need to have animal sacrifices made. But that would definitely be a huge problem, because you're taking refuge and promising to avoid behavior that will cause harm to other beings. And so this is in the second training, which is give up harming beings. So the reason why we have to give up harming beings is that it's contrary to the essence of the path. That we are wanting to benefit beings, to bring them all to liberation, not to cause them harm. And the third here of these specific trainings is to don't associate closely with those that are not in the Dharma. And Krangu Rinpoche explains this to mean that you don't have to give up friendships with people that aren't Buddhist, but do not adapt or adopt their views and behave like they do. That you want to have your close friends and associates to be connected with the Sangha, because they are the ones that hold the views that we want to hold, and they can support us. And we take refuge in the Buddhist community. So it's very good to associate with the Sangha. And to kind of give a little more detail on this, definitely if a particular person or a particular group will bring you down if you associate with them, rather than you bringing them up, it might be best to avoid them. And so to give you an example, it might be best to avoid going out and partying at bars, because it'll probably only lead you to lower your ethical standards that evening. So we do have to watch who we associate with. But again, if we can benefit another person, we can uplift them by being around them, that's excellent. And something that I have found is that I have a lot of friends that aren't Buddhist and aren't the least bit interested in Buddhism. And I was thinking about this today, that when I'm with them, they almost never ask me anything about Buddhism, and there's no point for me talking about Buddhism to them. In a case like that, I am more of an example. I try to behave like an ethical Buddhist monk. So then that leads the next category, which is the 3 common trainings. And this is to respect any representation of the Buddha, even apart, to treat it as very special. Because the Buddha is the one who can actually help us now and help us in the future. So it's important to have great respect and appreciation for the Buddha's qualities, and then have the same to his representations. And what came to mind when I was preparing this talk was the story about the Oakland Buddha, Oakland, California. And some of you may have heard me tell this story. But this is what happened, that there is this neighborhood in Oakland that was kind of a tough neighborhood. There was all kinds of stuff going on in the streets, and that to keep through traffic driving on these residential streets, the city put in at a 4-corner crossing diverters, so that when you got to that 4 corners, you had to turn. You couldn't go straight through. And of course, this discourages people getting off of the main roads and just driving through neighborhoods to maybe avoid traffic. But in this area, what happened was that that barrier became a place where people would drop trash off. And the neighborhood was going downhill. And so this man, who was not the least bit religious, he got the idea that he would buy a Buddha statue, an outdoor Buddha statue, and he fastened it to this barrier. It was, there was some width to it, so there was room for a Buddha statue there. And he said that he attached it so that it couldn't be just lifted up and driven away with, so people couldn't take it. And what happened was that a Vietnamese immigrant came across this statue, and she started treating it very specially. She would take care of it. She painted it. She went there and did prayers to it, would leave flowers, and so on and so forth. And she also spread the word. She talked to her teacher about this, and he encouraged her to do this. And other people started joining her, other Vietnamese. And soon there were people regularly being there early in the morning doing devotional prayers, actually sitting in the street because there wasn't room. And then a structure was built and a roof was put over the statue, and people were leaving more and more offerings, and incense was burnt, and it just got more and more elaborate. And the interesting part of the story is that the newspaper article that I read said that the reporter talked to the police, and the crime rate just went through the bottom. They're having this Buddha statue there, having these people doing devotional chanting and so forth regularly, that it really dropped the crime rate dramatically and the neighborhood improved. So this is one benefit of showing respect for even a statue of the Buddha that is just placed there for very mundane reasons. Interestingly enough, in a council meeting at one point, there was a motion that was made that, well, this is illegal. This is city property. You can't do this. And so they decided to appoint a committee to look into this. And let's just say the committee never made a recommendation, and the statue is still there today. I believe if you go to Google Maps and enter Oakland Buddha, you will find exactly where the Buddha is. And I think it's been there for close to 10 years. It's really a very inspiring story. So this is to respect any representation of the Buddha. The next is that to respect Dharma books and texts, that they provide instructions and explain the path. In a way, they represent the speech of the Buddha. So they are considered very special and worthy of great respect, even a syllable or two. And the teaching that I have received is that if you have to dispose of them, for instance, we do prayers here, and it's printed out like this. Well, if you have to dispose of a prayer for one reason or another, then burn it, shred it, recycle it, but do it in a respectful manner. Don't just throw it in the trash. And of course, you can always give books away. The third has to do with the Sangha. And this is to respect Sangha members. And this is ordinary members, not just teachers and realized beings, that they assist us on the path to, even if it's showing up, that we're benefiting from them and to respect them. And this can be summed up by saying just plain respect anything that is connected with the three jewels. And the last point is the beneficial effects of refuge. So it's a short list of 8 points. It's short in terms of he doesn't go into them in too much detail. The first is that by taking refuge, you enter the Buddhist path. The second, refuge is a foundation for all other precepts. Third, it is the cause for the purification of all our negative karma. The fourth is, having taken refuge, that we can't be affected by obstacles caused by humans and non-humans. In other words, they can't keep us back from traveling the path. The fifth one is that we will accomplish all our wishes, especially when we attain enlightenment. That we have attained the cause for great merit, accumulating great merit. Seventh point is that this prevents us from falling into the lower realms. And I will make this point though, and that is this: you have to keep your refuge current. It can't be like you take refuge and then you do nothing with it, because then it can't protect you because you've given up. And the last point is that having taken refuge, we will quickly accomplish enlightenment. And when I give refuge, I go through that list of 8. Rinpoche would do that too. This is pretty standard. And so to summarize this, he says that the immediate benefits of taking refuge are they protect us from suffering of the lower states, and the ultimate benefit is, quote, we are protected from all the suffering of samsara insofar as this will help us accomplish Buddhahood. He ends the section by talking about the Pratimoska Precepts. And he doesn't go into these very much. Gampopa doesn't go into them very much either. A lot of these precepts have to do with monastics, and so they don't have a lot of pertinence to you. To me, they do. But these precepts come from Vinaya, which is rules and so forth of monastic living. So first of all, you need to have refuge to take any of these precepts. So a refuge is, you might say, the basis of all other vows. Now, many of you have attended Nyungne here or other places, and we do take precepts in the Nyungne. So that is but these are temporary. They last from the time that you take them till sun up the following day. And in most cases, these precepts are taken for life. But for lay practitioners, there are really 5 of these precepts. Further on, he talks about 7 precepts, and these are 7 different categories of precepts, and 5 of them have to do with monastics. So the 2 of those, the other 2 of those 7 precepts have to do with lay people, lay women, and lay men. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about here. And so the 5 precepts that are possible to take for life are to don't kill, to don't steal, to don't lie, and to avoid sexual misconduct. Sometimes a sexual misconduct means that you will have only have a sexual relationship with a person that is your partner at the present time. And if that partner dies, then you are celibate for the rest of your life. Other times it might mean that if your partner then dies, you can have a new partner. Depends on the preceptor. I think Rinpoche would interpret it to mean that when your partner dies, then you are celibate. And then the 5th one is to avoid alcohol and recreational drugs. So you can take 1 or more of these 5 precepts, and you are the one that chooses, but you take them for life. And the point is that this outer discipline helps make us a suitable vessel for taking other vows, especially the Bodhisattva vow. So there are 3 reasons that are given here at the end of this chapter for these vows, 1 or more of them being needed for a foundation for the Mahayana path. The first one is by analogy. And the analogy is that if you invite a king to your place, you clean it up and you decorate it and make it look very nice and suitable for a king. And so when we invite bodhicitta, when we take the bodhisattva vows, for instance, then our body, speech, and mind need to be free from defilements and adorned, was his word, with moral ethics of abandonment. So that is the analogy here. The scriptural authority is, to sum it up, it says any of the precepts can be a foundation. He mentions 7 precepts, and I've talked about this a little bit. So there is an actual quote in the book from a sutra that talks about this. And then the last one is reasoning. And very simply, if we abandon harmful intentions and abandon causing harm to others, that we are suitable to practice bodhicitta and take the bodhisattva vows. But if we're not, we really can't take the bodhisattva vows and be of much benefit to other people without harming them. The question is, the special refuge, is this a different ceremony or is it motivation? And what makes it different is your motivation. That is what is absolutely most important. The question is, do these vows need to be done in person, or could they be done, let's say, over Zoom? And I am not aware of them being done through electronic media. Now, this doesn't mean that, because it's a totally different world now with COVID, but I would say that I would feel comfortable only doing them in person.